Welcome to the Clarin Array Show Daily World Brief. You can find this briefing and our full library of analysis over at clarinarratio.com. Today is June 16, 2026. Following a devastating 15-week war that choked off 20% of global energy supplies, the United States and Iran have reached a preliminary peace framework to finally reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
And the mechanics of this U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding outline a highly specific de-escalation sequence. President Trump and Iranian leadership have already signed the document electronically,
With a formal in-person signing ceremony scheduled for this Friday, June 19, in Geneva.
Right, and the immediate terms enforce a 60-day ceasefire and mandate the lifting of the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports. In exchange for that, International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors will return to Iran.
Their specific mandate being to oversee the dismantling of the country's highly enriched uranium stockpile. But Israel is explicitly distancing itself from this agreement. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israeli forces are actually going to remain in Lebanon.
Which heavily complicates the situation on the ground.
It does, because just today, Lebanese media reported a deadly Israeli strike with Hezbollah firing missiles in direct retaliation. This active, localized escalation severely threatens the stability of any bilateral agreement drawn up in Geneva. You simply cannot isolate a peace treaty from the crossfire happening right next door.
Translating that geopolitical maneuvering into actual public consequence means looking at the physical waterway itself. The Strait of Hormuz will not magically return to normal commercial traffic on Friday just because a piece of paper is signed.
Because over the last 3 months, naval mines have been heavily deployed across the channel.
Exactly. And that water must be rigorously swept by specialized military vessels before any commercial captain is going to risk passage. And beyond that, the war risk insurance premiums remain cripplingly high right now. Insurers are adding millions of dollars in costs to a single transit,
Creating massive financial barriers that leave 300 fully loaded vessels stranded in the Gulf, just waiting for verifiable safety guarantees. And you are seeing the collateral damage of those stranded vessels hitting domestic populations directly thousands of miles away.
like in Japan.
Like in Japan, where the central bank has just raised its main interest rate to 1%. That is the highest level the country has seen since 1995. Japan relies overwhelmingly on Middle Eastern oil and gas, so when that 15-week energy shock hit, it sent the cost of living skyrocketing.
So raising interest rates to 1% is a direct domestic reaction to cool down that imported inflation. They are making borrowing more expensive to offset the massive price spikes in everyday goods.
While intense economic friction is actively fracturing the G7 alliance over in Evin Le Pen's France, the European Union, represented by Ursula von der Leyen, is insisting on verifiable human rights changes before lifting any sanctions on Iran.
Her stance is that sanctions target both weapons of mass destruction and human rights violations. You cannot simply ignore the latter for the sake of cheap oil.
And simultaneously, the alliance is fraying over trade because President Trump is threatening 100% tariffs on French wine. This is direct retaliation for a 3% digital services tax that France levies on American tech companies.
The allies are negotiating global peace while actively punishing each other's economies.
Moving from the diplomatic tensions in Europe over to the physical reality of modern combat. A stark warning was delivered Monday at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk is demanding urgent international regulation of autonomous weapons.
He pointed to a horrifying 600% increase in drone-related deaths in Sudan this year alone. Warring factions are deploying foreign-supplied drones that are actively targeting civilian populations and aid workers.
The civic danger of artificial intelligence in warfare really lies in its profound moral void. Removing human control from lethal force creates a terrifying new paradigm.
We are watching billion-dollar automated systems indiscriminately slaughter civilians just because an algorithm identified a heat signature or a movement pattern. Without international treaties requiring human oversight and legal accountability, these systems operate entirely outside the established laws of armed conflict.
Normalizing a mechanized brutality where no single human being pulls the trigger, meaning no single human being can be held accountable for a war crime. But the tragic breakdown of military infrastructure extends far beyond the deployment of new automated weapons. Our legacy manned systems are failing as well.
Like the B-52 crash yesterday.
An aging B-52 bomber crashed immediately after takeoff at Edwards Air Force Base in California, killing 8 military personnel and Boeing contractors. They were conducting a routine radar modernization test on an aircraft model that has been in service since the 1950s.
We are pushing mid-century airframes to their absolute physical limits while simultaneously pouring fortunes into experimental AI drones. And maintaining those legacy bombers while expanding automated military operations requires massive capital, which is fundamentally altering national
In
budgets.
the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is implementing severe sweeping cuts across domestic government departments to fund the largest sustained increase in defense spending the UK has seen since the Cold War.
It represents a massive generational transfer of public wealth away from domestic welfare and public services, redirecting it entirely toward military readiness and weapons procurement.
That funding paradigm reveals a sharp, unavoidable civic double standard. Pouring billions of taxpayer dollars into weapons is consistently framed by politicians as a necessary investment for the future. Meanwhile, funding the National Health Service, repairing schools, or maintaining Social Security is frequently categorized as a wasteful burden on the state.
When political leaders argue that cutting disability benefits is required to buy frigates and fighter jets, it fundamentally questions what it actually means to keep a nation safe.
True national security has to involve protecting a population from poverty and failing health care, not just stockpiling weapons against foreign adversaries.
Governments are also grappling with the safety and taxation of commercial aviation. Today marks the one-year anniversary of the Air India Flight 171 crash in Ahmedabad, which killed 260 people. Investigators remain completely baffled as to why the Boeing 787's dual fuel control switches were moved to the cutoff position exactly 32 seconds after takeoff.
Moving those switches starved both engines of fuel, causing the aircraft to fall from the sky. But the simplistic pilot sabotage theory that has heavily dominated the media coverage ignores critical technical evidence.
Aviation experts point out that the pilots may have been desperately executing a dual-engine failure memory procedure. If the engines were already losing thrust due to an unknown malfunction, cutting the fuel is the first step in attempting a mid-air relight.
Or a catastrophic electrical fault may have caused the aircraft's computers to misidentify the plane as being safely on the ground. If the plane's logic gates think the wheels are on the runway, it might automatically cut the fuel. Blaming human error is a convenient narrative that often obscures profound vulnerabilities in highly automated, computerized flight systems.
Commercial aviation is also extracting significant financial concessions from governments at a time of extreme budget pressure. Over in Germany, lawmakers just voted to cut the commercial aviation tax back to pre-May 2024 levels.
Meaning the federal government is intentionally sacrificing 350 million euros a year in revenue to assist airlines. These companies are struggling with high kerosene prices, which is a direct consequence of the energy shock originating from the 15-week Iran war.
The government is actively subsidizing the profit margins of fossil fuel travel.
Providing sweeping tax breaks for fossil fuel travel contrasts forcefully with the devastating human toll of the climate crisis. A new UNICEF report shows that half the world's children now face at least 3 overlapping climate hazards.
Consider the reality for a 15-year-old girl named Lorna in Papua New Guinea. She is forced to swim across a crocodile-infested river simply to get to school because heavy monsoon floods destroyed her town's bridge over a decade ago.
It is a stunning reflection of global priorities when we can locate 350 million euros to subsidize global air travel while essential life-saving infrastructure for the most vulnerable people on Earth remains entirely unfunded.
And that failure to maintain physical bridges often mirrors the buckling of democratic and legal institutions. In the United States, California Governor Gavin Newsom is alleging that the Justice Department is actively investigating his wife and former staff.
Newsom claims this represents direct orchestrated political persecution by President Trump ahead of the 2028 election. But an anonymous source familiar with the inquiry confirmed the investigations actually originated from internal whistleblowers and firmly denied any involvement or direction from the president.
Political retaliation extends beyond government agencies into the realm of tech billionaires utilizing the legal system as well. Elon Musk is currently suing the German public broadcaster ZDF.
The broadcaster reported on Musk's role in amplifying right-wing extremist calls during the violent anti-migrant riots in Belfast earlier this month. Those riots followed a highly publicized stabbing incident involving a suspect from Sudan.
Musk claims the broadcast contained outrageous defamatory lies. ZDF has publicly acknowledged their initial phrasing was imprecise, but they are firmly defending the core journalism of their reporting.
European domestic politics are experiencing rapid structural shifts alongside these high-profile media battles. In Germany, the Free Democratic Party just elected veteran right-winger Wolfgang Kubicki as their new leader.
National polling indicates that 69% of the German public now expects a far-right AfD state premier to take office this fall.
In a separate display of local priorities overriding national prestige, Hamburg residents just voted against bidding for the Summer Olympics. The voters explicitly rejected the massive financial burden and civic disruption associated with hosting the Games.
While Germany navigates this intense internal friction, the United Kingdom is actively reconsidering its relationship with the continent. On the 10th anniversary of the 2016 Brexit vote, there is a renewed vocal push in the UK to rejoin the European Union.
This debate often reveals a deep political solipsism within British politics. The EU is currently managing a massive, complex agenda. They are dealing with the ongoing war in Ukraine and the integration of 9 current candidate nations. Brussels is not simply sitting around keeping a chair warm, waiting for Britain to realize it wants its old seat back.
While high-level geopolitical systems struggle to function, local communities are finding highly specific ways to address extreme wealth disparities. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani is aggressively promoting a pied-à-terre tax on second homes.
Yeah, this policy specifically targets the empty ultra-luxury ghost towers on Billionaires Row. These are massive skyscrapers owned largely by absentee investors who rarely step foot in the city. The mayor's initiative aims to extract $500 million annually from this dormant wealth to fund essential municipal services for actual residents.
The intersection of massive wealth and culture also produces incredibly bizarre economic offshoots. The booming Deleb or dead celebrity estate auction market is a perfect example. Fans with vast amounts of disposable income are paying exorbitant prices for mundane, everyday items to feel a manufactured sense of connection to deceased icons.
At a recent auction, Diane Keaton's prescription glasses fetched over $2,000. More shockingly, her used nail clippers sold for $960. It is a striking symptom of wealth detachment when a stranger's grooming tool becomes a high-priced financial asset.
Purchasing a stranger's nail clippers highlights a strange, commodified hunger for connection, but genuine human resilience is happening right now in far more profound and vital ways. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, healthcare workers are singing and dancing in the streets to celebrate the rare recovery of patients from the deadly Bundibugyo Ebola strain.
They are actively fighting back against dangerous coffin curse misinformation. That rumor began when a broken coffin was burned by accident, leading locals to falsely blame the resulting deaths on a spiritual curse rather than a highly infectious virus.
That misinformation sparked terrifying arson attacks at medical treatment centers, making the celebratory resilience of these medical workers even more remarkable.
Another moment of pure unifying human joy occurred recently in the tiny island nation of Cape Verde. The capital erupted in massive street celebrations, with citizens blowing vuvuzelas and dancing in their blue national jerseys. Their World Cup soccer team miraculously held the European champions Spain to a 0-0 draw.
For a nation of just 500,000 people, this cooperative, disciplined, defensive effort against a global powerhouse united the entire population in celebration.
These moments of intense human cooperation reflect a foundational scientific truth outlined in Rowan Hooper's new book, Togetherness. Darwin's original theory of evolution has been heavily hijacked by the capitalist framing of survival of the fittest, which implies life is an endless, brutal competition.
In reality, the natural world is fundamentally driven by symbiosis and cooperation. This ranges from the microbiome in our guts regulating our immune health to lichens and coral reefs thriving exclusively through mutual reliance. Even our cellular mitochondria are the evolutionary result of ancient, permanent cooperative mergers between separate organisms.
Synthesizing today's distinct stories reveals a vital recurring pattern. Whether you are watching diplomats attempt to negotiate a fragile peace in the Strait of Hormuz, seeing local governments tax ghost towers to fund their communities, or witnessing brave healthcare workers in the DRC collaboratively fighting Ebola survival relies entirely on our capacity for symbiosis rather than endless conflict.
If our very cellular biology relies on cooperation to survive, why do our political and military systems still default to the outdated destructive model of the survival of the fittest?
That is a question worth carrying with you today. For a slower, deeper context on the civic issues we discussed, be sure to check out Debate Candy. And for more daily briefings and classic audiobooks, visit us at clarineratio.com.